Ms. Maxwell, were you a close friend and confidant of Jeffrey Epstein?
I would like to answer your question, but on the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer this question and any related questions. My habeas petition is pending in the Southern District of New York. I therefore invoke my right to silence under the Fifth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution.
Let the record reflect that Ms. Maxwell has invoked the Fifth Amendment against self-incrimination. Ms. Maxwell, is it your intention to answer every question put to you by the committee today with the assertion of your Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination?
I invoke my Fifth Amendment right to silence.
The answer to that is yes also. So just as her lawyer, I'll tell you, yes, that's her intention.
As expected, Ghislaine Maxwell took the Fifth and refused to answer any questions. This is obviously very disappointing. We had many questions to ask about the crimes she and Epstein committed, as well as questions about potential co-conspirators. We sincerely want to get to the truth of the American people and justice for the survivors. That's what this investigation is about. Just to be clear, what her attorney said, Maxwell didn't say, her attorney said that she would answer questions if she were granted clemency by the President Trump.
Well, the king has to answer what he knew about Andrew. And just stripping Andrew of a title is not enough. I mean, Andrew needs to come before our committee and start answering questions. I mean, look, if you have allegations of raping a young girl, I don't think the appropriate punishment is you no longer get to be a prince. There's got to be more than that.
In my opinion, they have filed this writ of habeas corpus just to use it as an excuse to not answer more questions because, again, we know that she's a monster. We know that a jury was able to listen to all of the evidence and find that she should be found guilty. And even Donald Trump's Supreme Court, which that is saying a lot, even his Supreme Court has decided to affirm every single thing that took place on the trial level. We will not be deterred. We will not be distracted. We know who it is that needs to be held accountable, and we will go in and we will make sure that we continue to dig. This will not stop us because his co-conspirator decided that she was going to try to play games with us this morning. I got news for you, Ms. Maxwell. We're not done.
Ghislaine Maxwell, the former girlfriend and accomplice of Jeffrey Epstein, pleading the Fifth today before a House Oversight Committee. Lawmakers here want to find out exactly who was connected to the late convicted sex offender. This comes on the same day the DOJ allowed some members of Congress to review those millions of unredacted files. Representatives Thomas Massey and Ro Khanna claim their review found at least 6 names in those files, all redacted with no explanation.
I would like to give the DOJ a chance to say they made a mistake and over-redacted and let them unredact those men's names. That would probably be the best way to do it.
The broader issue is why so many of the files they're getting are redacted in the first place.
Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick also facing tonight bipartisan calls to resign after he appeared in the recent batch of files linked to Jeffrey Epstein. Today, the White House pushing back on this, rejecting those calls, expressing confidence in Howard Lutnick.
King Charles says he will support British police working on the Epstein case. This comes after new allegations about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. A report from the head of an anti-monarchy group claims he shared confidential information with Jeffrey Epstein. It involves the time when the former prince was a UK trade envoy, but he has denied wrongdoing in response to previous Epstein allegations.
My reaction is that there's no accountability with pleading the Fifth. We are hoping for truth and honesty, and that's just not there. I feel like predators are being protected in this situation.
I think it is important for, including Megabase, but the general public, to figure out if there were other potential collaborators with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, and I think that's worth litigating. But I think also, to your point, this is fundamentally a bureaucracy at the end of the day, and there's millions of documents. It's going to take some time, and I think honestly, at the end of the day, Trump doesn't want this to be the sole focus because there's so many other domestic priorities that he's still trying to achieve. And frankly, this is taking up a lot of headspace. And if, in
no
a way,
more headspace than in the victims' heads.
This is the Justice
no
Department.
more headspace than those poor women and girls will have to live with for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, who cares what Trump wants? The Justice Department should do their job and protect these victims. There are victims here. They're not doing their job. Trump shouldn't be leading this and determining what comes out and what doesn't. The Justice Department should be acting independently to find out who molested these girls and bringing them to justice.
I mean, to be clear, this is the problem. This is the problem with the way certain documents.
He shouldn't have anything to do with this.
He doesn't have anything directly to do with it to that point. I mean,
his attorney is going to sit with Ghislaine Maxwell.
I'm sorry, but have you seen any evidence of the president directing to the level you're even remotely talking about, redacting or not redacting certain documents?
Here's the challenge. We saw his administration bring people in to go through the documents before they came out.
For 4 years, none of this conversation taking place. So I do think that this president is doing a hell of a lot more than the previous one did.
But see, here's the problem. Here's the problem with this
Let the Justice
exactly,
Department do their
Abby.
job.
The problem is that the president, usually the Justice Department has some claim of being impartial. The Justice Department can say, we've got distance from the White House. We can't even talk to them. When I was in the White House, you couldn't even call the Justice Department to ask them when a press release was going to be released. You couldn't do it. But now the president has inserted himself so often into the DOJ operations, it's hard to know where the line is for him and when he's directing things and when he's not, because he personally has injected himself into it.
Even if it's not him personally, I mean, there are many people even in his administration whose names have come up in these files. One of them is Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary. He had said at one point that he cut off ties with Jeffrey Epstein. Then the emails showed that that wasn't quite true. Here's what Thomas Massie says should happen to Lutnick.
What questions do you have about Lutnick's ties to Epstein, and should he come before Congress and testify?
No, he should just resign. I mean, there are 3 people in Great Britain that have resigned in politics. The ambassador from Great Britain to the United States, the prince lost his title for less than what we've seen Howard Lutnick lie about. Look, Howard Lutnick clearly went to the island, if we believe what's in these files. He was in business with Jeffrey Epstein, and this was many years after Jeffrey Epstein was convicted, lightly sentenced, but was convicted for sexual crimes. So he's got a lot to answer for, but really he should make life easier on the president, frankly, and just resign. If this were Great Britain, he'd already be gone.
Is that fair, Jason?
I think the criticism is fair, for sure. And I do actually think that Howard Lutnick should answer to some of the conversations he had and when he had them and why he said. But I don't think he should resign based on the details we have at this point.